It was the summer of 1925. New York City buzzed with life, a symphony of clinking glasses, jazz melodies, and whispered secrets. Among the city's elite, one name was on everyone's lips: the great Charles Whitaker. A gentleman detective of unparalleled wit and intellect, Whitaker had a reputation for solving the unsolvable, and his services were often sought by the wealthy and powerful. Whitaker, a man in his early 40s, with a neatly trimmed mustache and a penchant for tailored suits, was known for his meticulous attention to detail. His sharp blue eyes could see through lies as easily as glass. On a particularly humid evening, as the city bathed in the golden glow of street lamps, he received a peculiar letter. The envelope, made of fine cream-colored paper, bore no return address. The seal was an ornate G pressed into dark red wax. Intrigued, Whitaker opened it and read, "Mr. Whitaker, your reputation precedes you. I require your services for a matter of utmost discretion. A tragedy has befallen my home. Come to the Gatsby Manor tomorrow at noon. This is not just a mystery, it is a game of life and death. F. Gatsby." Whitaker raised an eyebrow. The name Gatsby was synonymous with opulence and mystery. The elusive millionaire was known for hosting lavish parties, but rarely stepping into the spotlight himself. Whitaker had heard whispers of Gatsby's rise to fortune, most of them riddled with scandal. Intrigued, he decided to accept the invitation. The next day, Whitaker arrived at Gatsby Manor, a sprawling estate on Long Island. The mansion stood like a palace, its marble columns gleaming under the midday sun. A butler led him through the grand hall, where chandeliers sparkled like diamonds. The house, however, was eerily silent, a stark contrast to the lively gatherings for which it was famous. Whitaker was escorted to a study where a tall, impeccably dressed man awaited him. This was Gatsby himself. His striking features were shadowed by a palpable tension. "Mr. Whitaker," Gatsby said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming. I hope you can help me solve a most troubling matter." "I will do my best," Whitaker replied. "What seems to be the problem?" Gatsby gestured to a nearby armchair, inviting Whitaker to sit. "Last night, during a small dinner party, one of my guests, Mr. Theodore Barnes, was found dead in the library." Whitaker leaned forward. "How did he die?" "A single stab wound to the chest," Gatsby said grimly. "The weapon, a letter opener, was left behind. The guests were confined to the estate until matter is resolved. I've kept the authorities out of it, as I prefer discretion." Whitaker nodded. "Very well. I'll need to interview the guests and examine the scene." Gatsby led Whitaker to the library. The room was a haven of polished mahogany and leather-bound books. In the center of the room, a crimson stain on the plush carpet marked where Theodore Barnes' body had been found. The letter opener lay on a side table, carefully preserved. Whitaker examined the weapon. It was ornate, with a gold hilt engraved with the initials F.G. He raised an eyebrow. "Your initials, Mr. Gatsby?" Gatsby frowned. "A coincidence, I assure you. The opener is part of a set in this very room." Whitaker's gaze swept the room. He noticed an overturned glass on a nearby table. "What was Mr. Barnes' relationship with your other guests?" Gatsby hesitated. "He was controversial. Theodore had a knack for uncovering people's secrets and using them to his advantage. He wasn't well liked." "Fascinating," Whitaker murmured. "Now, the guests." The first interview was with Evelyn Rose, a glamorous socialite in her 30s. Draped in pearls, she exuded an air of confidence, but fiddled with her cigarette holder nervously. Theodore was vile, she said bluntly. He threatened to reveal something about me, something from my past. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're implying. Where were you at the time of his death? Whitaker asked. In the ballroom, dancing, Evelyn replied. Plenty of witnesses. Next was Henry Cartwright, a wealthy banker with a stern demeanor. His handshake was firm, but his eyes darted nervously. Theodore was a parasite, Cartwright said. He knew things about my business dealings, but I had no reason to kill him. I was in the dining room with Mr. Gatsby when it happened. Whitaker's final interview was with Claire Bennett, a quiet woman in her 40s. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands trembled as she spoke. Theodore ruined my life, she whispered. He spread lies about me years ago, but I swear I didn't kill him. I was on the terrace, alone. Whitaker noted her words, but said nothing. That evening, Whitaker sat in the library, piecing together the puzzle. The guests all had motives, but none had airtight alibis. He examined the overturned glass again and sniffed its contents. There was a faint, bitter smell. Poison, he muttered. But the stab wound complicated matters. He turned his attention to the letter opener. The initials F.G. nagged at him. Could Gatsby himself be involved? Yet, his demeanor suggested genuine concern. As he pondered, a thought struck him. He revisited the scene and noticed a faint smudge on the carpet near the stain. It was a footprint, but not from a shoe or stockinged foot. The next morning, Whitaker gathered the guests and Gatsby in the dining room. The case is solved, he announced. Evelyn scoffed. Already? This should be good. Whitaker smiled faintly. Indeed, Theodore Barnes was a blackmailer, but his death was not purely out of malice. It was desperation. The murderer was Claire Bennett. Claire gasped, her face draining of color. That's absurd. On the contrary, Whitaker said. Your motive was the strongest. Theodore's lies cost you your reputation and nearly ruined you. You attended the party in stockings, not shoes, as evidenced by the footprint near the scene. You poisoned his drink first, but when it didn't act quickly enough, you stabbed him in a panic. Tears streamed down Clara's face. He destroyed my life, she said. I couldn't let him do it again. Gatsby, visibly shaken, called for the authorities. As Clara was led away, Whitaker turned to Gatsby. The gambit was risky, but it worked. Justice, however painful, has been served. Gatsby nodded solemnly. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Your intellect is as sharp as they say. Whitaker tipped his hat. All in a day's work. And with that, the gentleman detective disappeared into the golden haze of the afternoon, ready for his next mystery.